Hello, everyone. So, in the last video I made regarding this opening, which was maybe a little bit ago, so if you haven't seen it, you should definitely check it out. There should be a playlist with both of these videos in it. But we were discussing the double, three, 4 points here that are facing as white. And in the last video, the big takeaway was that when your opponent approaches low like this, you often want to enclose the bottom left corner and let your opponent press you down like this. The idea overall is that you're getting quick territory and you're putting your opponent in a position where they feel slightly uncomfortable. This group here, for most people, is quite annoying to use. And if you do it wrong, you get into trouble. If you do it right, it's not like anything here is significantly better for black. The main goal behind this opening was to make it so your opponent can't follow their normal opening strategy, and they have to potentially put themselves in an even more uncomfortable position. However, I believe last time I did talk about how the move that I think is a little bit more annoying to deal with is actually when they do the high approach here. And that is what we're going to discuss in this video. You might think, since last time we just did the enclosure here when they approached, that we may want to do the same thing again. It doesn't quite work that way with the high approach because, and there can be some other reasons as well, but the main reason why I don't like it is that when black attaches to the corner like this, and we play the most basic Joseki that you'll see here, it's actually kind of annoying for white compared to it being annoying for black. And even if they just do the basic extension and we can do the same thing, either here or going low if we want to, black is no longer in a position where they feel uncomfortable. So we are already losing that aspect of the opening, but we aren't getting as much territory as we were with the last one. There is also a possibility that black can play a move like F17, which is just extremely annoying, I have to say. Even if you understand the Joseki, for example, there is this move that you can possibly play where we have something like this, and we're just continuously being pushed low onto the third line here, and they can maybe make some sort of larger extension on the left side. Even if you can understand that one, there's actually a lot that you need to know about how that Tesuji works in order to play it. And I believe the AI sometimes even likes playing this here, which allows some weird variations, which I just don't want to get into. So we're giving our opponent that opportunity to put us in that awkward position instead of us putting them in an awkward position. And I do whatever I can, for the most part, to prevent my opponent from playing a variation or an idea that they've probably studied more than I have, which is one of the reasons why I like to keep things simple overall. And yes, they probably know all the simple variations, but I do too. And that's why I want to keep things as simple as possible. Instead of taking the bottom left corner, what seems to be better for me is just taking C15 right away. So we're exchanging the bottom left corner. Like, this bottom left is the one that's likely going to be small, similar to the previous one where they approach low. And the upper left here is going to be the bigger, stronger corner. Now, if they just do a basic extension, 3-space low or high, it doesn't really matter which one. We are actually pretty happy to take this enclosure for ourselves. This is actually a very nice position to be in because we have everything that we wanted before. We have the really strong upper left corner that's bigger than it is with the other variation that we talked about in the last video. And then we have that same corner enclosure, so we can still build by approaching if they are letting us do that, or if they stop us from approaching, we can still just keep breaking up their territory or breaking up their side and not worry about anything else. The one thing that is a bit different, though, is that in the previous video, we talked about how getting an approach on the top was quite nice. But in this case, we really don't care about the approach on top. There's not really a good way to raise us from the third line. So here, I just have to think of this as a completely flat third line area, and that just doesn't feel very good. And even if we can raise it a little bit, it's not going very far. So instead of approaching there, or even considering approaching that, we're sticking to the idea of separating the board into small pieces by breaking up the right side with R10. Or we can do something like one of the moves I really like, which is a S5 to continue to reduce and just break up the board. One thing that I do want to mention before I'm done talking about this area is that the move here at C8 is actually really worth playing, even though it looks really small. Like if you have a choice between this move and this move, I'm going to say they're actually more equal than you might expect they are. And one reason why this move on the left is really big is because we are now threatening an invasion on that left side. So if they fix it, we've played a move that now fixes the weakness that we had in the corner while also threatening our opponent. So we got to get that done in Sente, and we can just move on to wherever we want to play next. Just an interesting thing to note, even though it's just a 1-point jump, it is still quite large. Because if they play near the bottom somewhere, we do have this invasion. I'm just going to show the most common variation here. And now black is just a, not necessarily a very weak group, but it's just a group without eyes and without a base. So they will have to keep running around in the center now. That invasion is always quite annoying. And there are also ways of trying to get influence if you wanted to. This is another way the variation can be played out. I'm not going to show all the variations with this here, but I just want to sort of highlight that. I did make a video about this invasion at some point last year, I think, maybe. Maybe I don't remember exactly anymore. But I did make a video about this, so you can check that out if you want to. But that's just something that's really good to note. Whenever you have this opportunity, it's actually bigger than it seems. So we kind of already understand that we're put into a pretty nice position from here. So what is it that I'm actually really annoyed by? Well, it's actually when my opponent approaches the other corner as well. Something that I've come to learn over time is that this group in the upper left is actually extremely easy to take care of. It seems like it could be considered like a heavy group, but honestly, it's extremely easy to take care of, which we can potentially see here in the future. Now, if we wanted to, we could try something like kicking and just jumping back like this, let him do it at some sort of extension. And then in the future, we have this invasion that could be very annoying for our opponent because they have like too far of an extension. We're specifically invading on the fourth line here because they can't connect the stones. If we would just want to live, third line could be fine, but they can likely connect, maybe get a lot of influence. But like I said, it is pretty easy for black to handle. Black can just jump up to G14, and if we're jumping along with them, they're able to shoulder hit this top side. And if we play the most basic Joseki here, which is push, peep, and slide, black is already actually in a pretty strong position, and they can also just keep jumping out. Something to really note here is that it's really hard to get out from behind black. The head position of this group is very far ahead of us. That's at least 2 spaces away. And if we jump 2 spaces, we're not necessarily in trouble, but there is going to be cutting Aji. So it's a very light way of playing, but it doesn't go along with the idea of us trying to attack them. So usually you wouldn't want to do it. And if we're just jumping like this, they always sort of have that option to go over the top of our group. That's why the head position is what sort of Baduk Doctor says it is. That's why that position is really important. Whoever is ahead of their opponent is usually in the advantage during a fight. So that already feels a bit awkward. And it's hard for us to attack the left side group because if we try to take away the base, for example, they don't have to let us connect our stones up in any way. I'm not even sure if we can really connect our stones up without getting into trouble. Since we can't really take away the base, even if they just let us take away the base, they are still just attacking us. And it's going to be an awkward fight throughout the game. Is this going to be something perfectly fine? Honestly, yes. You probably are not going to lose the game just because of this. It's probably even still considered even. I did not check this specific thing in AI, but it probably is still considered pretty even. But what I try to avoid for the most part is playing in a way that makes me feel awkward. I want my opponent to have that awkward feeling. So I'm looking for something that's as comfortable as I can get and uncomfortable as my opponent can get. So if we go back a bit here, this is why I don't like having this sort of invasion here, because it's actually harder to deal with than it seems. Now, of course, we don't have to invade first, But what are our other options? Well, like I mentioned already, approaching on the top side or the bottom side here is actually not that interesting because we can't really build. We can only really take away territory because we're just so flat everywhere. If all the stones are going to be on the third line, you're going to have a hard time building anything. And there's not really a strong way for us to go up to the fourth line, fifth line, or sixth line, or anything like that. It's going to be too hard to do that sort of thing. So you usually never try to prioritize building points in these areas. That's sort of like a last ditch effort thing to grab a couple extra points later in the game. Because of that, it makes it hard to approach, meaning that we're either going to be taking a corner or we're going to be doing something to split the side up. And we're not really going to be focusing on building the tops or bottoms. If we're not building the top and bottom, then these invasions are going to be harder to deal with in the future because we have nothing to stop our opponent when they're trying to run away. For example, if we already had some stones over here, just in general, then you can see how that could make this invasion better. But if there's no reason to put stones there, then this invasion is just not going to be something that's too important. I just want to make sure I highlight that thought process there. So if we want to try to make that work a little bit better, one thing we could do is try to do some sort of diagonal here. You can do the knight's move as well. But the difference here really is basically the same thing for black. They still just have to handle one group. Their other group is going to be able to live pretty easily. And we can now we can build maybe the bottom side, but building the bottom side has no real impact. We'll just back off here. Has no real impact on the invasion on the left side here. Maybe if we want to play high to make sure we're separating, right? But it has no real impact on this invasion because the group that we're mainly attacking is going to be these 3 stones, which we need stones on top in order to make that attack more powerful. So it's just not a very efficient way to use our stones. So if we go back here, this is really what tells me that we need to find a better move. That doesn't mean that you can't play those moves. You can do that sort of thing. But I really, really like to look towards the future and have possibilities open for myself and how I could potentially win the game, how I could maybe look for an area to continue to build in a very large way. And I just don't see those future possibilities. And I see it being easier for black to have those options. So instead of that, I did decide that your opponent's key point is your key point. They were supposed to play 3 spaces away from these 3 stones. So let us do the same. And we specifically want to play the 4th line. This is going to make it easier for us to run away. Now, our goal here has shifted a little bit. We're probably not going to be able to build anything in the center, but we're also going to make it so that black can never build in the center as well. So let's say they do press us down. This would be a very common variation. We can just push and jump here, similar to the previous video. And actually, the layout is starting to look very similar again. We have a solid corner, and we have the press down corner. And now we just have to deal with this singular stone here. They do have 2 groups that have a possibility of being weak. So if they try to take a base, which I believe is the correct move to play here, then we can just jump away. Our goal is not necessarily attacking these 3 stones. Our goal is running to the center. Yes, maybe they can slide underneath and try to do some sort of connection, but we're not going to worry about that. They can take second line territory if they really want to. It's often best for black to just jump again. And then this is where, like I mentioned in the previous one, we want to keep paying attention to the head position of the stones and try to get out as far as we can. So we're not going to play on the top side. We're going to jump again in the center. This does give black that option, again, to defend this group in the upper left. This is why I say this group is actually hard to deal with. And let's just say we play that same Joseki we saw before. I think this position has changed a few things. Instead of black being the one who's able to surround us really easily, it's actually starting to look a bit like we are the ones who can surround black. Yes, the left side is still a bit open in that regard. The head position of our stones is much further ahead of black this time. And so that means it's going to be much easier to deal with our 3 stones. We still have a very decent amount of territory and our Komi. And so now all we have to do is continue to make sure the center is never turned into a lot of points. Some people may worry about some sort of attack on these stones. but you don't really have to worry about an attack while they have two groups that can still be attacked themselves. But especially this group on the left side, it doesn't have any eyes yet. If black continues to jump out, this is a perfectly good move that they can play. Then we can actually continue to do the same thing. We may as well take Tengen. We're not jumping to save our group. We probably have enough space if we really were worried about saving the group. But what we're doing is we're preventing our opponent from gaining points or gaining potential. If we decided to be a bit more greedy in some way and start trying to build like the top side or try to approach the bottom side, when black gets to Tengen first, now they're taking control of the head position, going over the top of our group. If we just have to run away here, and maybe they could even try to be more aggressive if they really wanted to, but if we just have to run away here, then look at all this potential that they were able to start building for themselves. You have to be very careful and always pay attention to this possibility. I always try to look for where my opponent could turn the position around. That's why I like this position significantly more than when we pincer after their group is already pretty strong. So again, we just jump out, and now we're already in a very, very strong position, and we don't really need to worry about any sort of way that they're going to make a lot of points. Now that we're extremely far out, if they really, really wanted to keep jumping and trying to take the head position, we can probably move on to breaking up the right side. We don't necessarily have to keep focusing on the group now. We have 4 stones out to the center. We have plenty of space to sort of handle this now. But it probably is still actually okay to keep jumping. If I'm honest, it actually is fine. I believe the AI gives this like a -1 to jump right now. And that's because it's not very efficient. Like I mentioned in the previous video, I'm not worried about a perfectly efficient opening. I'm worried about an opening that I know how to handle. And I know how to play this opening. And I can be fairly confident that if black is not able to make a moyo, and I have 2 solid corners, plus the ability to approach his other corners, that I don't really have to worry about anything. I think the best move for black might actually be to play J17, by the way, to potentially just capture this H15 move and make their group extremely solid while pressing us down. But in any case, that is the goal now. When they approach high, we have to switch things around a bit. Yes, you could try some sort of pincer, but I'm trying to be consistent in my thinking, trying to be consistent in what I want. And so this is the best way for me to accomplish that goal. It's always worth experimenting and trying to find the thing that you like the most as well. Now, one thing I didn't mention is that when they do this, if they decide to approach high, what do you do? One of my friends really, really enjoys just taking another corner here. And I think this is fine. Definitely nothing wrong with this, but this does give me that same feeling as before, where there's just no way we're building points on this top or bottom side. And so those sides of the board are just absolutely worthless now. And we have to start doing something to the right side of the board. And I think it's actually a little bit harder of a game because I just don't see where I can make more. I can only see where I can take away. And if I want to be in this sort of position, then I want to do it in a way that's easier. So I still, for the most part, like to do this. Now, this does put you in that position that I didn't really want to be in before, right? This is where they can attach in the corner again. And so, yes, we can answer here. We can play here. They can try these weird Joseki, like I mentioned before. And so that's why this can be a bit awkward. So this is the only one where I was pretty uncomfortable with this position overall compared to if they approach low, which is considered the better move by AI. So after looking at this a bit more, this is one where I do like to pincer in some way instead, a little bit closer to this stone. Because the position is a bit more awkward in this area, I want to help the bottom left a little bit more than the upper left. So the goal I have here is to kind of prevent this group from having a perfect extension. What I mean is when we pincer here and they go ahead and take this, this move here is kind of a perfect extension for this group. This group is entirely safe now. So if we want to still keep them in a slightly uncomfortable position, we can't make them super safe, especially since we kind of need another move We need another move over on the bottom side, and we need another move with our weak stone. This is totally possible, but again, we're starting to get behind our opponent's head position, and that's something I didn't really want to be worried about. So the best way, in my opinion, was to do some sort of closer pincer. I think the one I liked the most was around C8. Again, we're just trying to prevent them from getting a perfect extension, because now if they do the same sort of thing, they can only really go here, which is really, really cramped. So in this case, we're trying to change our focus. They can still try some other types of pressing moves, but the most common move is still to just play a jump here. And you can play low or high. This is the most common move. And they can push a couple times and really, really try to attack this stone. One of the major differences is that while they're attacking this stone, they still have a weak group in the center, and we got more territory than in the other variations. This is sort of a compromise to some extent because I still don't really care for this position. It feels like it's still a fairly equal result in any case. And the reason I feel that way is because we still have some potential of getting a decent amount of points if we get to play on the bottom first. If we're able to take a move at 03 before our opponent, this is going to be a fairly decently sized bottom side. And we do actually want that move. Whereas before, we didn't really want to play on the bottom at all. And it's still going to be somewhat difficult for them to build the center. If they want to try to build right now, one of the problems is that their other group starts to suffer because of it. And if they just save their group, then we're still able to start moving towards that center. Let's play this basic variation. And I guess they don't have to defend this. They could probably keep pushing. We are still surrounding the left side, which it could be attacked a little bit in the future. But one of the other problems for black is that they kind of have to stop us in two different directions. We can move this way, and we can move this way into the center. So they need two different moves to stop us, and we can always switch which one we want. And if they're still playing towards the center, we can potentially play the other direction. I don't know if we want this particular knight's move, but that's the idea. If they get one, we can take the other. I would probably still just defend my left side group and surround the left side, but that is the overall idea. This is still the more complicated and annoying position to be put into, but I'm leaving my opponent the option to make more mistakes this way because they're the ones who have to choose how to play. If they really want to go after the center, they can. If they don't think the center is very important and they just defend the other way, then we're still going to be walking out towards the center and they have a weak group. So it gives us more possibilities in how we can approach the game. So we've covered the main variations that I would really want to think about and work through when it comes to the high approach here. And you see how just changing the approach from low to high really changes a lot of the results. You can still be happy, like I said, with this enclosure, as long as you don't mind how you deal with this upper left. A lot of the opening is personal preference. You don't have to play a very specific way or follow along with exactly the plan that I have. As long as you have some sort of idea on how you want to play, that's all that really matters. There is still some information I would like to cover for this opening. So hopefully I don't wait as long this time and we can still cover a little bit. I know one of the reasons why I did not want to make the next video right away was because I started getting into positions where I just really didn't like this high approach. So it took me a while, honestly, before I finally was comfortable with it. And what I have shown here in this video is basically what I have figured out. I hope you guys enjoy this. Hope you guys are happy to see a continuation from something from a long time ago. I hope you guys are having a good day and have fun.